Now excited to be joined by a very special guest. It is Paul Finebaum. Paul, let's start with the above the fold news in your life. That's a little newspaper term for the kids who might not are like above the fold. What's that? You're moving back to Alabama after 12 years away in Charlotte, SEC Network Studios in Charlotte. You're still doing your show, but what was the motivation considering that moving is the single worst thing that we as human beings do on a regular basis?
Yeah, I'll make it really simple. My wife wanted to, and we've been looking around for a while. But just because you go look, it doesn't mean anything. And there was a house in particular we were interested in Alabama. We could not get back there until Christmas, for the same reasons you probably couldn't be doing a lot during the season. And on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, believe it or not, we looked at this house, and it was just going to be enormously difficult long term project. And on a whim, the next day, our agent took us to a house, and everybody's been there before. This is the third time I've been on the same road, and I'm about 5 minutes into it, and I'm checking my phone because I'm bored with all the bells and whistles, and my wife is like beaming, and I knew it was over before we even got to the master bedroom. So while I was in New Orleans covering the Sugar Bowl, she was making an offer on a house, and we're moving. So I mean, I know this sounds like every guy's story, but and I'm trying to be as objective as I can, but that's it in a nutshell.
What does one do with eight bathrooms?
I don't know, because I didn't even know until there was a media report on the house that it had that many. Listen, when you're in the public eye like we are, you cringe when stuff like this happens, but you're also aware, having worked at a newspaper like I did many years, that when you have a public transaction, it is going to attract some attention. So, I mean, it's kind of crazy, but because I've always shied away from things like that getting public, but I've lost this battle badly.
Just if I wanted to do the Brian Windhorst connecting the dots, Nick Saban retires. Later that same year, you move back to Alabama. Coincidence? Not a coincidence? Just something
Um,
something I'm thinking
yeah,
about.
I mean, I was even though he's 4.5, almost 5 years older than I am. A lot of people have always said, you'll probably leave the same time Saban does, and at least I did one thing better than Saban. I stayed in my job longer, although he probably still has a better job as a part-time employee. But there's no coincidence. I'd love to give you a conspiracy theory there that we did it in concert. The one thing that this now confirms for all to know, and this is breaking news on Saturday down south, that I no longer live in Nick Saban's guest house. I have my own place.
It's a good point. There once it's out there on Zillow, once the people are out there reporting it, that is as fact as ever. Because I'll be honest, I never did a deep dive on where you lived in Charlotte. I don't have any sort of confirmation on those whereabouts. Now the Alabama stuff, that's all out there. You're right. That is officially been put to bed.
Yeah, no, I mean, and where I live in Charlotte is pretty simple compared to this one. But again, I've been married 34 years, and I'll try to spare you all the cliches that men hate. But I brought us here. My wife had actually a better job than I did when we left Birmingham. She was the chief of staff at a really big hospital there, at a big medical practice. She signed off on it, and yeah, if you want to do a psychoanalysis, is there some guilt underneath all this for having moved her away from her home? And she's from there. I'm not. You could accurately say there is, so that's why we're going back.
Happy wife, happy life. That's what everybody
Yeah,
always
that's
says.
the rumor.
Yeah. How's the relationship with Saban since he joined your side on the media? Because he's spoken about how there are those challenges that he didn't necessarily account for of having predictions and takes that are just kind of out there, and then having people circle back to that, which you know all too well. Have you taken your pal under your media empire wing and just kind of shown him some pointers?
I have tried to stay away from it. I did say something to him at one point before he got on the air that everything he said would be under a microscope, and I think Saban acted like, well, everything I do is under a microscope, but I don't think he understood, quite frankly, Connor, that predictions, idle comments would metastasize in the aggregation world. My guess is he was probably nonplussed a couple of times by what happened, but he's done such a good job, and you know, he's a needed voice. I think maybe we often give him too much credit. I mean, I think I will pull out my last remaining hair the next time a coach suggests Nick Saban as czar of college football, because it's not going to happen, nor would he make any impact if it did happen, because of all the reasons we know. But I think he desperately wanted to do something after retirement, and this has been on the table for more than 10 years, as you know. The offer has been there. I mean, I was privy to it as it was all unfolding more than 10 years ago. So there was never a doubt this is what he would do. I think the real question is, how long can he be satisfied talking on TV about college football as opposed to doing something that probably he thinks is more meaningful, like actually being involved in it.
He seems to have a real passion for it, though. And that's kind of what you always look for is, does it seem like someone's just showing up and collecting a paycheck versus someone who's actually sitting there excited about what they're talking about and what they're breaking down. And for now, maybe it's just the first year and the fact that it was all new, but he approached it with a tenacity that I think the viewer at home could appreciate. And I was kind of ready to be like, hey, what are we doing here? You know, the Tom Brady Fox thing, you know, you take that for what it is. But Saban's very, very good at this already.
Well, as you know, I mean, he is a preparation freak. I had an SEC head coach tell me that he literally, before the season, between spring and late summer, got on the phone for over an hour with every single SEC head coach, just peppering them. So he wanted to be prepared. And by the way, it's a good lesson for all of us. But you know, that's who he is, and I think that's how he, you know, that his passion is being prepared for whatever he is doing, and he's fantastic at it. You know, how long? You know, nobody knows. Television is a weird being. It's a little bit like a new car, where you drive off the lot and you feel great, and then a year later it doesn't look so new anymore. So I think that's I don't think that's a big deal for him, but I think after a while, television does wear everyone down. I think it will get to him as well.
How much of the current SEC panic, which is probably unlike any panic, well, it's maybe similar to what was experienced in 2014, where 2 consecutive years of the SEC missing out on a national title, and it's the start of this new era of the playoff. It is similar to that, but maybe you could argue it's as great as it's been in the last 2 decades. How much of that current SEC panic is related strictly to the fact that Saban is no longer around to be the rising tide to lift to sort of lift all boats?
Well, I think he's part of it. But yeah, I remember the reason I remember 10 years ago so well. I literally had a book coming out called "My Conference Can Beat Your Conference."
Heard
Uh,
of it?
it came out a couple of months after Auburn lost the national championship, ending that long streak. And my publisher, I mean, we were just like, how could this happen to us? It really didn't affect book sales very much, but it put me on the defensive when I would go on a show in the Midwest in Tallahassee, Florida, for that matter. Ultimately, I don't think this is as big a deal as the media is making it out to be. And before somebody grabs that headline, I'm the one who on Tuesday morning after the Monday night game was asked by Mike Greenberg on ESPN, does the Big Ten now own college football? And I said, yes, it does. So, I mean, you have to acknowledge the reality. And the one thing you don't want to do is start quibbling. Well, yeah, you won the championship, but 6 through 14 or 16, we're better. That doesn't fly. You just have to accept what it is. But I still think the SEC has a great football league. It just so happens that the Big Ten has won the last two, and that's good. It just so happens that the Big Ten and the SEC got married while you weren't looking, so maybe that covers the pain a little bit more.
Matt Rhule saw that comment and he harked back to what you said in response to him in the preseason when he was at Big Ten Media Days. He's talking about, the Big Ten's the best league in college football. We deserve 4 auto bids. I hated his reasoning at the time. If anyone else had said that, I would have been pretty much okay with it. But I didn't really like who it was coming from when, of course, Nebraska was just trying to make it to a bowl game, as you pointed out. But Have you had a chance to respond to what he said right after Ohio State won the national championship and he circled back to try and dunk on you?
Yeah, let me tell you a quick story about that, and I haven't discussed this with anyone. Before he put that out, you know what he did? He called me, and I knew him not well, but I knew him a little bit when I first met him at Temple, and we exchanged the text now and then, and he'd been on our show a little bit when he was at Baylor, so I knew it was coming. And he actually said to me, "Hey, if you don't want me to do this, I won't." I said, "Are you kidding? I mean, of all people, me stopping somebody from having a little fun on social media." So when it came out, I didn't say a word, and this is the first time I've said something about it. It was funny. Listen, if you can't make fun of somebody who goes on Get Up and just eviscerates you, then you're not very smart. And I think he's a smart coach, and I'm a fan of his. So even though I mean I was excoriated for days on every site in the Midwest, I still got a big kick out of it. But most of all, I have great respect for him. The fact that he called, Lane Kiffin wouldn't have called, nobody else would have called, and I think if I'd said, Matt, please don't do it, I don't think he would have done it. But I would never say that to anyone though.
That would have ended so horribly if you had said, "Ah, Matt, come on, man. I've got to hold on to all credibility that I've got. Please don't put that out." That would have come back to bite you in ways that, look, people, there would have been no saving you from even, your biggest defenders. That was a smart move and good look into the crystal ball on your part.
But I believe it came up recently with this thing we were talking about with my house. That somebody said to me, "Well, can't you call them and stop them writing about your personal life?" I said, "No, I can't do that. I do that. I've done that my whole life." I mean, and one thing I really have a hard time with is hypocrisy. And by the way, it's the media. I mean, what's a big story on Monday is gone on Tuesday. You know that because you're in the same trade where the stories change from time to time. But that's something I will never do in terms of, because I've had it happen to me, and I know you've had it happen to you too many times when somebody says, "Well, you can't write that. You can't publish that. You can't broadcast that."
Which coach, speaking of Lane, which coach dislikes you the most right now, and why is it Lane?
Ooh. Well, it's not Lane. I know everybody thinks it is, but we actually are pretty good friends. We text a lot. We talk occasionally. I mean, I know there might be 100 people who could say the same thing about Lane, but I really he just gets he's got this thing about me that goes back to SC that he just cannot let go, and I've advised him to seek counseling to try to get over what happened in 2013, but apparently he just can't seem to get over it. But in terms of the SEC, in terms of college football, uh, I can't tell you that I have a major beef at the moment with anyone in particular. I'm sure if you got the coaches in the SEC around the table, they would probably all start taking shots. But I happen to like quite a few of them. Now, around the country, I would say of all coaches, pro and college, Jim Harbaugh probably dislikes me the most. But he no longer really factors into my life.
That's true. And you did apologize or at least admit you were wrong after Michigan
Yeah.
won a title and, take that for what it is. But what about Dion? Is Dion a guy that you have?
It's interesting. I took a couple of shots at him, but he's got this intermediary that reached out to me and said, "Yeah, I just want you to know, Prime loves you." And, and
Of course he
I
does.
sent word back. He said, "If you need anything." He's actually been on our show before and was unbelievable. But what I said about Dion before not before, yeah, before the season was actually wrong. And I came back to I did. How many mea culpas have I done in my career? But I did one on First Take with Stephen A. Smith because I really did not think I thought the whole thing was all sizzle, was all hype and sizzle. But it turned out that he's actually a very good coach.
Definitely has proved a lot of people wrong. And I think that for those who are kind of waiting for this thing to fail, you're definitely biting your tongue at this point. What'd you make of the year of the what did you make of the season that Lane had from start to finish, where everything in the offseason felt like, man, this is his time. I think you saw a shift in personality when his dad died, and you saw him have a little bit of this altered perspective, and then you see the way that the season plays out. You see even after beating Duke in the bowl game, he's complaining about not getting included into the playoff and how they were trying to take it out on Duke essentially, even though Duke was playing with a backup quarterback, third string quarterback. It just felt like a year that Lane was all over the place and maybe a little bit of a microcosm of his career.
Yeah, I think it was a microcosm, and quite frankly, I think he blew it. He had, as everyone said before the season and during the season, his best shot, and it came down to two unforgivable losses. Primarily the one against Kentucky, although I think he let the game against Florida get away as well. And he if he wins either one of those, he's in the playoffs, and you can figure out whether or not he would have gone far because I think his team was good enough to make a run. And I don't know what happens next for him. I also believe very strongly he was looking around, and I think we all know he was looking at Florida. He can deny it, but I don't think there's anything to deny. I think it's a fact. That situation never opened, of course, and the irony that Billy Napier ended up beating him is almost too delicious. But I I still think he's a very good coach, but there's no sugarcoating that this was a lost season for him.
If that Florida job opens up, is it still Lane or bust?
Possibly. I mean, I believe he wanted it. I believe he still wants it because I think there's just something about Florida that attracts him. Some of it's history, some of it's just his admiration for Spurrier. In the past, he told me once that that's why he started wearing the visor. So I don't. I mean, that's the hardest job in the world to handicap right now because what Napier did at the end of the year really was shocking. But I don't think his problems have all gone away though.
I agree with that. I do think there is going to be more grace with the Lagway piece of this and the way that
Mhm.
it played out this past season. But I'm fascinated to see what unfolds at Florida this upcoming season. For you personally, we've talked about the Finebaum show sitcom with Jason Biggs that fell through because of the pandemic. I've talked about wanting to see Stanley Tucci play you in a biopic. I think he's just straight out of Central
Wow.
Casting. That would really work. I think he's only like 4 years younger than you too, which would be, a nice little, he could kind of play it through the years
Yeah,
really
I think he
well.
could manage.
He'd be perfect for that. What's something you haven't done that you want to do in the next 5 to 10 years?
I think if you go back 5 years ago, that was very much top of mind for me because I mean I was in the middle of it. As I alluded to one time, I was the executive producer of a Hollywood sitcom that never happened. I've kind of moved on from that. I'm still kind of really enjoying what I'm doing, though, Connor. And I know a lot of people who've done what I've done in the past can't wait to move on and write and all that. I don't have much interest in writing. I mean, I've done it, and you know, there's still a few people who remember me being a sports columnist, but I've attempted novels before. I concluded that I was a terrible novelist. I don't really, I don't know what I would do if I wasn't doing anything. I think that would be the ultimate test. There are a lot of things I would like to do. I'm a great historian and I'm fascinated with history. So I think if I didn't do anything, I'd probably like to travel and look at and go do things that I've never been able to do before. Uh, I'd like to visit Normandy. I'd like to go to Auschwitz. Just a number of things like that. The Far East. I don't know if I'll do it, but I think that's more what I would like to do. Just study things than to maybe write a bad book that nobody reads.
The only incorrect answer there was getting into politics, like your guy Stephen A. Smith continues to say that he's going to do.
Um, you know, I, I blame myself for that Stephen A. Smith thing because it was on our show. That was the very first time he talked about it. And ultimately, he could make some noise because he does have a big brand, and I think that's been proven that really matters. But I think the political winning the presidency is so complicated. I mean, I've always been interested in politics. I had somebody the other day call up the show and ask me about running for governor of Alabama, and I started to laugh. Um, Ultimately, I don't think I have the patience for that kind of thing. And I mean, I openly said, okay, I'm going to name my camera guy Randy as the director of this, and we're gonna be all about corruption and graft. And unfortunately, I thought I started gaining traction the more I talked about that. But I think that's one of the worst jobs in the world right now is to be in politics.
You think your job is thankless now? Ugh, that's a road you don't
And
want to go down.
I mean, I'll tell you this: I've been to I go to Washington a lot because there's a group up there of SEC fans who have me up usually every summer. So when I do, I go see some people that I know, and I know a couple of senators. I was in Tommy Tuberville's office for about an hour in July, and he was interrupted 3 or 4 different times, and he just kept shooing the people away. And what were we talking about? SEC football. Uh, I mean, we were holding court. I was literally going through his whole career. I mean, well, the big wins of his career, I might add, the 6 wins over Alabama, and he had a couple of his staff guys in there. And I mean, finally, I had to go meet somebody else. And but I saw this guy who is a United States senator. He's a senior senator. He's very close to the White House, and all he wanted to do was talk football. So I think if I ended up doing that, that's all I would end up doing. Uh, if I ran for governor of Alabama, everywhere I'd go, hey, what's going on with the boar? I mean, I don't know if that's really what you're supposed to do if you're a politician.
Your platform would be entirely football,
Yeah,
entirely, and people would
I am
forget that you're
going to
running.
make, I am going to make Alabama football great again. Hey, by the way,
There,
it's not a bad idea. If I could do it as the governor, I think I might do it.
there. Trust me, you would not need anything else beside that. You wouldn't need an actual plan. You would just need that
No,
slogan. That would get you elected alone. When was the last time that you were starstruck upon meeting someone?
whoa, that's a really interesting question. I guess it was the weekend that my wife and I spent with Taylor Swift and Travis Kelsey. I was just kidding you there. Uh,
God, to be a fly on
um,
that wall.
no, I think I think really I'm often more starstruck by people in the just people in politics or in the business world who have accomplished a great deal than maybe the entertainment world because you really do. There is. I'll tell you a funny story. I was doing. I used to go to New York every week before the pandemic, and you got to meet a lot. I mean, there was always some celebrity in on First Take. Uh, I was talking to Kevin Hart one day, and then one day this very powerful looking actor was walking in, and I shook hands with him. And I mean, I knew who he was, but I didn't know. I mean, I knew. So I immediately texted my wife. I said, "You're not going to believe who I just met," and I told her the name, and she said, "Make sure you get a picture. My nurse's son is his biggest fan." It was Michael B. Jordan, the actor, not Michael Jordan, the basketball player. And
A little different.
it really was. But that's always fun when you. I probably had one of my more enjoyable conversations ever years ago. Connor, here goes my wife again. She said, I said her birthday was coming up, and I said, well, anything? She said, I'd like to see Barbara Streisand. I'm like going, Barbara Streisand. I mean, again, I didn't even realize she was touring, but she was doing like a farewell tour, and she was nowhere close. So she ended up going doing at Barclays in Brooklyn. And I called a friend of mine. I said, "Do you know anybody who?" Because I didn't really. Do you know anybody that knows Barbara Streisand? She said, "Oh my goodness, yeah, I've got a client who is her manager." Anyway, speed the story up. We're on the seventh row. All of a sudden there's this big commotion about 6 or 7 rows from us. This was like in 2017. And I look down and it's Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton. So the guy at the intermission comes in and said, it came to my friend, not me. I didn't know anybody. He said, afterwards, Barbara's having a few friends. And we walked in, and there was this party afterwards with Dr. Oz, Ben Stiller, John McEnroe. I mean, it was like one Hollywood celebrity after another who was friends and in movies with Barbara, and all of a sudden there is Bill Clinton standing alone for a second. I'm like going, do I go engage the former president? I literally walk up. I don't know if he knows who I am. I said, Mr. President, Paul Finebaum. He goes, Paul, great to see you. So what's the first question? I said, how do you think the Razorbacks are going to be this year? And Connor, 30 minutes later, we are still talking Arkansas football, primarily Arkansas basketball. He was telling me about going to the Final Four in 1994 when Noah Richardson won. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw a very familiar woman. This is now 2017. She like tugged at him 2 or 3 times. I'll be there in a minute. It was Hillary Clinton trying to get Bill Clinton away from me. And he just kept shooing her away like a fan, like, don't bother me. I am talking. And so a couple of weeks later, it was SEC spring meetings. And I ran into John Calipari, who was on our show. And afterwards, he said, hey, by the way, I was with a friend of yours last week in Harlem. I'm like going, I looked around and see if Calipari was talking to somebody. I said, really? He said, yeah, I had lunch with Bill Clinton. And but it kind of, the full circle of the world is fairly small. You just have to, the moral of the story is you just need to be in the right parties and you can almost meet anyone.
That's unreal. And to think, by the way, you've just told 2 stories in which politicians just want to talk ball. That's it. That's all they want to talk with you.
I mean, I'm telling you what, I mean, I realize, I mean, there's a million people around, but he didn't care. He was really having fun, as opposed to somebody walking up to him and say, hey, what do you think about Trump? What do you think about Putin? What do you think about global warming? I mean, he just blocked the whole, and there were a lot of, I mean, I can't remember who some of the other celebrities were, but we were best friends for 30 minutes.
I'm just gonna assume now that Bill on a Tuesday afternoon is just turning on the Finebaum show and just that's his escape from
No doubt.
everything else in the world. He's just turning on the Finebaum show and like, hey, what are they gonna say about my hogs? What are they gonna what are we gonna get into today? That's, oh man, that's
I'm
unbelievable.
surprised he hasn't become a caller.
I if Bill Clinton, it's just Bill C, and you hear the voice, you would know what it is. Hey, it's your friend Bill. That was a bad Bill Clinton imitation I just did.
Yeah.
But if that came up, the reaction would just be, that'd be an all-time Finebaum moment that I look, I don't know if your standard callers would be able to top. You'd be on cloud nine the rest of the show.
Yeah, and I don't want to play politics here, but in the mid '80s, I was at a very small dinner party in Birmingham, about 12 people, and 3 seats away from me was the owner of the New Jersey Generals, Donald
Donald
Trump.
Trump, yeah.
And the next day at Legion Field, it was the New Jersey Generals and the Birmingham Stallions. I'll give him credit. He is making the rounds in the press box, especially to the New York Post. And he walked up to me. He remembered my name from dinner. He sat down. This was about 30 minutes before the game. I can't do Donald Trump, but he looked out. He said, "Look at this crowd." He said, "This place is sold out." He said, "You know why?" He said, "Me." He said, and I said, I walked out of there going, I have never met anyone like that in my life. And this, you got to think about this. This was a 38-year-old Donald Trump who, and I was mesmerized because, first of all, he remembered my name from a dinner party the night before. And like him or not, he has not changed one bit since he was the owner of the New Jersey Generals.
Wonder if he still remembers your name. Bill does.
I haven't had any. I mean, I know a lot of people that do know him, but I have not had any other encounters. He was almost on our show a couple of years ago before the famous LSU Alabama game with Joe Burrow in Tuscaloosa, but it never quite came to fruition.
I'll get you out of here on this. It's the same question that Marler and I asked you the first time you ever came on Saturday Down South podcast. The aliens come down to Earth and saving the planet comes down to winning a football game for whatever reason. And you need one coach to be able to win this football game to basically save planet Earth. Who's that coach that you're taking to be able to win that game?
That coach.
Got to be a current coach. How about that? So that Saban's
Oh,
off the table.
okay. Not C. Sarkeesian. Let me assure you. Uh, nor is it James Franklin.
James Franklin would be a bad
Um,
answer. Yeah.
yeah. I, I am going to surprise you because he let me down the last time the game was on the line, but I'm going to choose Kirby Smart.
I think that's the only answer that one can have at this point. Yeah. Can't go Dabo either. That doesn't. 5 years ago, when we were doing this, that would have been an interesting alternative answer to Saban, but I think that's the only answer. I think you're right.
I'm glad I
Oh,
got something right during this podcast.
we went down avenues that we had never
Man,
gone down
I mean,
before.
I did not intend to start digging up, make this into inside Hollywood, but hey,
I'll take it.
you have a way.
I'll take it. Oh, one last thing. I wanted to tell you this. I was recently talking with my mom about the catchiest songs that we've heard in the last 10 years. She remembered exactly where she was the first time that she heard Heartache on the Dance Floor, our mutual favorite of John
John
Party's.
Party.
I was thinking of what I would answer for this, but I'm more curious what you would say. What's the catchiest song that you've heard in recent memory besides that one, of course?
I like Cool Kids.
Oh, okay. That's recent. That's very
Yeah,
recent.
I heard that the other day. It's just got that that beat. I normally go country because I had this great country experience a couple of months ago. Kenny Chesney spent an hour with us in the studio. Um, I don't know anybody that knows John Party, but I will promise you one thing: if I'm ever anywhere near John Party, I am going to grab him by the neck and we're calling you.
I You didn't just make my day. That makes my week. That makes my month, maybe my year, if that ever ends up happening. I look,
I'll tell you
fingers
one story to
crossed.
go. A couple of years ago, I spent the afternoon with Darius Rucker. We were doing one of the series we do, talking to famous SEC people who aren't athletes, and this lady that is a personal trainer that I know, she's always talking about Hootie, and I took her with me, and to this day, she tells me it's the greatest day of her life spending time with Darius Rucker. So I am now. You asked me what am I going to do when I quit doing this? I'm going to be in charge of my own Make a Wish Foundation, and instead of I will do everything I can to help young people that need it, but I'm primarily going to like people like you, friends who surprise them with their heroes, calling them.
Instead of Peyton's places, it's Paul's
Yeah,
places. And it's just
exactly.
you just taking people to meet their heroes. I'm on board with
That's going to
that.
be it. I'm all over it. So you get a list. By the way, Marler does not get a call.
He's not gonna like that. He's not gonna like that one bit. Paul, you're the best. Safe travels on your move. Hope that you're not lifting a single box.
No, hey, always a pleasure. Thank you, Connor.